quick update, y'all. Today's what, February 23rd. Happy Monday. Market was down pretty. The financial media likes to say down the biggest percentage, whatever, since this date, whatever. It was down today, but nothing extraordinary. Nothing that is completely out of the ordinary, or that I saw that was out of the ordinary. Over the weekend, the president did say he was going to increase tariffs up to 15% universal. And so, there's things don't happen in the market all the time, but what I can share that I learned are, I can start sharing what I've kind of learned. And I've been reading some articles, and I got some good questions too regarding my thoughts on this implementation of a universal tariff. And I think depending on what you read, I think in the short term it's going to be lower overall than what he had. I even think, in my opinion, long term it'll be lower overall, because people are saying, I guess the administration's saying we can collect even more in the future, but who knows if he had planned to collect even more based on how he felt. If the laws weren't in place, if SCOTUS didn't rule the way they did. So that's the whole issue. They can posture, but it was a big loss for this administration. I think the Republicans are having a really hard time digesting the fact that they got a really, really bad result for their economic policies, which is I do whatever I want, whenever I want, in whatever size that I want. And basically SCOTUS is saying, no, you can't. You got to go through some processes. It is more complex. You have to have reasons. They have to be good reasons, and they have to be studied. Some of these studies take years, a year. The administration wants to speed it up in many cases after the 150 days elapses for this 15% tariff. So we can go on and on about tariffs, and but the whole point is, as I mentioned before, you can't just wake up one day and just do whatever you want. And that's a good thing. Again, that's a good thing long term for markets. So what happened in markets today? Not a whole lot. I was reading this article in the New York Times, though. And I don't know. I'm trying to find which one it is. I've been saying this, but international markets have been doing well in relation to the U.S., even last year. Oh, a lot of claims that this administration says that it's got lower crime, lower inflation, higher jobs, all debunked by the New York Times today. Higher jobs, more jobs because you're not talking about percentages of jobs. You have more jobs because as a population, we have more people in the United States now. Inflation isn't that much better. So prices, aren't that much better. And unemployment's not that much better. Okay, so... And then the only real thing, crime is not that much better. The only real thing that happened that the administration has claimed is, I guess, illegal immigration, or immigration at the border has gone down a lot. So, but aside from that, this has not been a very successful first year. Now it is the first year, but it's still a full year. There's a State of the Union tonight, so I'm probably not going to tune in just because they're such long speeches, and they say a lot of nothing, and a lot of it is, as the New York Times pointed out, a lot of it is lies or inaccurate. So those are my 2 cents on the tariffs and how it's developed since then. But yeah, other than that, 15% across the board. He can do more after 150 days, or Congress can extend the 15% tariffs. But it's, just a whole lot of nothing. But yeah, I just learned that there's just not been that much progress in this administration's first year. So, but yeah, other than that, not much else to report on the markets today. Not a whole lot happened. I don't think it's anything to write home about. It's just, as I've been mentioning, just stick with your investment plan overall and don't worry about the noise. If everything was perfect and the birds are chirping, there's no uncertainty, or there's no uncertainty, but uncertainty creates lower prices. And so if everything is solved and you don't, and there are no worries, and the market might be too expensive. Just keep that in mind. But I'm still debating on short clips or podcasts, but the podcasts are, they take a lot of work. So I might have to stick with more short clips and just editing the short clips. But I hope everybody had a great Lunar New Year. Oh yeah, there's this big debate between Alyssa and Eileen I do want to speak on that. Some of the better interpretations and analysis that I've seen so far is both should be celebrated. Both are American born. There's plenty of American born athletes who compete for other countries. The most winningest one is the pole vaulter, Armand, I think his name is. He competes for Sweden. And you don't hear much from him because I think part of it is he's not winning as much as Eileen is. And so Alysa did great. And her situation's somewhat different, but yeah, I think it's great she represents the United States. It would have been great for Eileen to do that as well, in my opinion. But when I started reading these hate comments under Eileen Gu's profile that I've heard before, go back to your country, you don't belong here, it just, you start having sympathy for her, because at least for me, I've heard all that before, and I live here, and I love America. I would represent America if I was in the Olympics, things of that nature. So, but I've heard all those racist remarks, and just because she chose to represent China, all of a sudden it's open season to have this hate come out. And so I wish there was a better way for people to express the fact that she didn't choose the United States. But as you dig in, she was raised by her mom. I don't think her dad was even present. And she loves her grandma who recently passed as well. And so she identifies with them strongly. So even though she was raised in the United States. So, that's her pick. I personally don't think she would have achieved anything close to what she could have achieved here had she been in China as far as an Olympic athlete. And so I don't think she's fully addressed that, and I don't know if she has a good answer, quite frankly, because it is... But again, a lot of athletes do that, and I don't understand that either. You know what I mean? That doesn't mean I go to Armand and start calling him, names. There's really no names you can say that's racist, because I guess it's... I guess I could, but, he's representing Sweden, and it doesn't induce the same hate as maybe a China. And people are like, well, I don't like China specifically because of these human rights violations, things like that. So... I would like to see why Eileen Gu's mom immigrated here, but I would think same thing as everyone who went from a communist country to a capitalistic and democracy. It's for the opportunity. the chance to succeed in a way that you couldn't in any other society. And that's exactly what happened, I think, for their family. In a way that couldn't have happened anywhere else. So I don't agree with like pitting Eileen and Alyssa Liu against one another. David Portnoy or whatever went on the air and he couldn't even differentiate their names, which is completely plays into the whole like Asians all look the same stereotype. All their names are the same. You can't even differentiate the names. But I think what most people are feeling, what a lot of people are feeling, is a lot of pride, and deserved, from Alyssa Liu choosing, to represent the United States, even though she was recruited by China, but first and spied on by China, but her dad, fled Tiananmen Square, that protest, and fled because of the human rights abuses of China. So there's no way they're gonna. They felt pretty strong that they're not gonna represent China. So I think Americans were super appreciative, maybe even overly appreciative, given what Eileen Gu did. So I understand that sentiment. And I felt the same way, actually. I was like, that's even better that I'm not even trying to pit one against another. I feel like doubly, it's kind of like having children and maybe one doesn't pan out the way you want, so you put a lot of pressure on the other one to be what you want. It's the same thing unfairly for Alyssa. It's unfair for Alyssa. But that's how I kind of felt, like, to make up for Eileen, we got Alyssa type thing. So I kind of get that sentiment, but I think it's getting delivered the wrong way, by pitting them against one another. There's not that many gold medalists in general, and especially Asian American females. So there's so few, and at such that high of a level, it's you're proud. You should be proud either way, as an Asian American, seeing Asian Americans succeed. I get that sentiment as well. So happy for Eileen, but I think Dave Portnoy was more just like, I can't cheer for China though. I can't cheer for you because it feels like I'm cheering for China. So, but anyhow, it's obviously, I don't know how the people feel. I just felt like I'm a sigh of relief when Alyssa won gold and chose the United States. She won 2 gold. So, and them, I get it, the comparison, because they both from the Bay, they're both born here, they're both, Chinese, or part Chinese. So I get the comparisons, but yeah, I just think everybody needs to calm down a little bit. It's just, I get both, I get everybody's argument. It's just, there's a lot of emotion right now. People are feeling a lot of pride in their country and the results and stuff like that. I felt tremendous pride when Alyssa won, and the way she did it, it was uniquely American and can only happen in America. So I thought it was such an inspiring story. And Eileen's is inspiring in its own sense. It really is. I mean, for a single mother, basically a single mother, to raise Eileen, and for her dad to be out of the picture, and for her to still reach the heights that she did because of strong women in her life, that's pretty cool too. It's a different story though. You can't just lump them all together. That's all I'd say. all too often we lump them all together. We lump people all together. We lump stories all together, and we don't take people's individual stories for what it is. So I'd encourage everybody to dig in a little bit and formulate your own opinion once you dig in a little bit. But my view on that is each accomplished athlete should be judged on their own merits. And I think what we're doing is confusing the two. That's really it. Thanks, y'all.